Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I am going to prepare for Skeleton Crew. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our T Public store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. I hope you've really been enjoying our content over the last couple of weeks here because I sure have. We've been doing such a wonderful job of getting a really great group of guests on the show and having a wide range of topics about things standing from the Mustafar Takes Los Angeles to Disney Plus and celebrating 5 years, Rise of Skywalker, music by John Williams, and it's finally time to get back into that Star Wars season. Now, this is typically the part of the episode where I would do the Cloud City Gossip section of the show. But because I am pre recording this episode due to the Thanksgiving holiday and traveling here in the United States, I have pre recorded this episode. So, no Cloud City Gossip this week. I hope that you have had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday if you're here in the United States. And if not, happy weekend to you. I hope that you are taking some time to relax and enjoy the fun and just wild era before Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew drops on December 3rd on Disney Plus with a 2 episode premiere of sorts. And like I always say, it's so cool when we get a new Star Wars project because like up until you see that show for the first time, um, everything you knew about Star Wars, there's before and after, right? Everything that you knew or thought you knew about Star Wars changes afterwards. You have more context about things. You have new characters added to it. They might have been somewhere, right? These Skeleton Crew kids may grow up and then they're at the Battle of Exegol, 25, 26 years from now or something like that in the timeline, which would be awesome. And that maybe they unearthed something in this adventure they're going on that leads to them becoming more important and integral to the Star Wars galaxy. What is Jude Law's character, John Nanawood? I have no idea. Is he a scoundrel? Is he a Jedi? Is he a Jedi scoundrel? Is he none of the above? Frankly, we don't really know. It's frankly, I think many of us will have this transition period of trying to say his name, actually, Jod Nanawood, rather than just saying, oh, it's just Jude Law. It's Jude Law in Star Wars, like many of us have been saying for the last couple of years here. I'm just glad that this show is coming out. And this the point of this basically I'm just rambling on here already, getting into my thoughts and ruminations about Skeleton Crew before we even get to the launch of Skeleton Crew. Anywho, welcome to Force Ghost Conversations, everybody, your cozy home for deep dive conversations and discussions to all things Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent things, where we will cover things such as Willow and Indiana Jones. If this is your first time kind of joining the ride that we do here at Force Ghost Conversations, it can range from anything and anything under the Star Wars and Lucasfilm galaxy. So hope that go check out some of our past episodes. There are some wonderful discussions and conversations within those breakdowns, and I hope that you join us for the Skeleton Crew conversation because much like the Acolyte and Book of Boba Fett and things that came before, I think there are going to be some really nuanced and interesting things that this show will bring forth because it is from a different perspective. This show will be primarily, from the most part, a group of 4 kids going out into the galaxy, seemingly for the first time, and exploring the vast reaches of the galaxy in this post post Return of the Jedi world set during the time of the Mandalorian. And who knows what wacky adventures they will get into. Frankly, I feel like I am probably the least prepared for this show than any of the Star Wars releases, and I don't know if that was the intent of Lucasfilm or anything like that, or just me not being not reading every single detail that potentially comes out. I've got obviously we're part of Neil Nation here on Force Ghost Conversations. Neil, I think, will be the key to all of this. That character will be, I think, just truly a magnificent heartline through line of this series that I think a lot of people will connect with in many ways. Um, all that from a little bit of stuff in the trailers, of course. Um, we were at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim in 2022 when John Watts and Christopher Ford, kind of the showrunners of this endeavor, came out on stage and talked a little bit about Skeleton Crew when they filmed it then. I mean, can't believe they almost filmed it 2.5, almost perhaps 3 years ago, or at least we're in the process of it back then. And then talked about it in 2022 and now almost 2025 when this show ends. It'll be early 2025 when all 8 episodes, I believe, are out, that it's finally come to fruition. And I think that's part of the model of release that Disney Plus tried to do, kind of the toning it back on how much they put on the streaming service, how much they're spending on it, etc. Um, all that comes into play here, and I think Skeleton Crew was kind of at fault of not at fault of that, but they were definitely feeling the consequences of the larger corporations' actions here when it came to their release schedule and their release time. So finally glad to see that it's coming out again. Was there when they were talking about it originally, kind of the first we had heard details about Skeleton Crew up until that point in time, but now at that kind of hard launch, if you will, when they came out on stage and talked about it, they were saying like, all right, it's a bunch of kids going off and having this Amblin like adventure in the Star Wars galaxy. Kind of what you would think of in a modern sense as perhaps probably the best thing would be to equate it to is a Stranger Things, kind of those first 2 seasons of that, but in a Star Wars sense rather than kind of trying to relive 80s nostalgia. Even though you're going to be reliving 80s nostalgia in this show in many ways, I believe as well, both in its harkenings back to Star Wars, but also when they say Amblin like adventure. Now, what does that exactly mean? Now, I think that's going to mean something different to each and every person that is in the space, in the film space. I think that means absolutely nothing to people that are just perhaps casual viewers. Maybe they're not on um, all the social media platforms. By the way, we're on Threads and Blue Sky, Force Ghost Conversations, if you want to find us there. They're not attuned to all the debates. They're one of the few people that were able to just really enjoy the Acolyte and to say that was a great show and then moved on to the next show, without having to deal with the discourse online and the YouTube commentaries and think piece articles about it, all that stuff. So what does that necessarily mean to the folks that are actively engaged in these kind of conversations? Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is E.T. Perhaps the symbol of Amblin is the prototypical image of Elliot and E.T. on their bike flying over the moon, with the, of course, swelling John Williams score playing on in the background. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind. The second thing that comes to my mind is the Goonies, which is also a Steven Spielberg produced film. So Steven Spielberg really is the through line when it comes to Amblin. It's his production company, etc. Um, Goonies, directed by Richard Donner, I've also watched that in the lead up to this, is literally about a bunch of kids that go off on a kind of treasure hunt of sorts that then discover treasure, but also they discover that the friendships that they'd made along the way and the adventure of it all is the true treasure, and their relationship and friendship is above all else, and it's the most important thing. Uh, so just a true, but ultimately, I think from what those both movies entail is that there is a lot of heart, there's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of humor, and there's a whimsical nature to that all. So I think those are kind of if you're looking to do some quick Thanksgiving prep, or I know Thanksgiving is already passed by the time this episode comes out, but if you're looking for like um, in like the 2 days before Skeleton Crew comes out, if you really want to do a quick 101 course into that, those are the two films that you will want to watch. Some other things that I think may be helpful for the Amblin nature of it all in some ways is perhaps I would argue Back to the Future, another Steven Spielberg produced production, but also his involvement is heavily there, with Marty McFly doing this kind of supernatural um, adventure that he goes on, going back in time, then forward in time. So at least the original Back to the Future, 1985, is one of those films I think could have some influence in this, particularly. Oh, I think Poltergeist might be a sleeper one that people may not associate necessarily with the Amblin of it all. But again, another Steven Spielberg produced film that includes wacky adventure with a family kind of at the heart of it. A little bit more of the horror elements, I think, showcases in the trailer a bit with perhaps some of the pirates and Smee. Um, at least at first, he's kind of this ruggish character, so that those may be some influencing factors there. Um, I also want to throw out that Gremlins from 1984, another film that I just watched recently for the first time, could be another thing that comes into play here with, um, again, a bunch of kids going reacting, not necessarily going on an adventure, but reacting to this supernatural thing that is happening around them, and this seemingly calm and quiet, respectful community during the holiday season. Again, this is coming out during the holiday season. Skeleton Crew is now reacting to this major problem that it's affecting their community and how they band together amidst this craziness. Um, so I think those are kind of the big forefront things. Of course, Star Wars will be an inspiration. I think Indiana Jones will have definitely some uh, weight in there. And this all makes sense when you look at like the filmography of John Watts, who's primarily done, at least most famously done, the recent Spider-Man trilogy for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's where this kind of idea grew out of, where he had this conversation on set with Jon Favreau, who of course is involved in all Mandoverse kind of film and television stuff, and he basically pitched him the story there, and was like, "Hey, let's see if we can." Pitch it to Lucasfilm and see what they think about it, and then that's how the ball kind of got rolling there. So basically, the moral of the story, kids, is never know where a conversation could lead to, and then one day you're working on this thing, and the next day you're working on a Star War. So I think that is great. I like John Watts as a filmmaker. I've loved those Spider-Man films, but he's also brought a great group of filmmakers into this space, including David Lowery and Bryce Dallas Howard and the Daniels and Lee Isaac Chung. Um, so the fact that all those people are getting involved in this, who have a tremendous pedigree. I'm especially excited for the Daniels because there is a filmmaker roundtable video. It's like 11 minutes long on Star Wars YouTube page right now, featuring a couple of the directors of Skeleton Crew and their kind of just musings in preparation for the show and what fans should get excited for and all that stuff. And they did talk for a good couple of minutes there about not a couple minutes, but a couple of seconds about the Daniels. And basically, they had been courted for Skeleton Crew and approved and accepted and approved for Skeleton Crew before Everything Everywhere All at Once came out. So the Daniels are the directors for that film, which won a ton of Academy Awards in 2 years ago for that Oscar run. So very fantastic film. I cannot express that people should watch it enough. Kihei Kwan is featured in that, and he won Best Supporting Actor Academy Award for that, who you may know from the Lucasfilm space already as Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He's also Data in the Goonies, so he has definitely the space here in the Amblin adventures of it all as well. So very excited to see them. Lee Isaac Chung had just finished doing Twisters, which is another fantastic film that came out this summer, which ILM did the work for. But he also did some work on The Mandalorian season 3 as well. Bryce Dallas Howard, of course, has been involved in so much in the Lucasfilm space over the last couple of years. So it's almost like, oh, of course she's there. But yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard is there, and she's kind of like the old hat one now at this point. Like she knows what the previs is like. She knows the volume, she knows the limitations of it, and to see her continue to grow as a filmmaker, I think, is going to be one of the more exciting things that I'm looking forward to in Skeleton Crew. And David Lowery, of course, who just done Peter Pan and Wendy for Disney Plus, which Jude Law is also in. So again, it's kind of funny that they remark that um, he just finished working on that film with Jude Law, where there's pirates and there's kids, and it's kind of a similar nature. And then the John Watts and Christopher Ford called him up and was like, "Hey, do you want to do this Star Wars thing with kids and Jude Law and space pirates and all that stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." They do a funny joke where it's like this Venn diagram of like Jude Law, pirates, and space, and kids is like at the center of it is David Lowery. So at least they're very tongue in cheek. They're aware of themselves in this endeavor, and yeah, so that's kind of all the kind of the behind the scenes stuff here. In terms of the story, again, I think it's just exactly that from what we've seen from the trailers. It's going to be a bunch of kids, these four kids. We've got Neil, we've got Wim, we've got Fern, and we've got KB going off. Somehow they discover this ship on their planet, perhaps a former Jedi temple or something like that, I don't know. And then they go off on this adventure. They got some old Republic credits. They're going to kind of come across the scum and villainy across the way, and that through that they're going to run into Jod and Alwood. And it looks like pirates like Vinay from The Mandalorian season 3. And some of that pirate crew that we got to see at Star Wars, not Star Wars Celebration, but I actually got to see them at D23. The costumes and the props and all that were fully on display there. And Legacy Effects did do a little bit of a segment with SM33, who will be known as Smee. Nick Frost does the voice acting for that character in the show. So I think those are going to be the big foils here. A lot of pirate imagery from the trailers, of course. Suburbia, I think, will be a really interesting thing to see in the Star Wars sense. They've kind of got these like bikes that are like speeders in Star Wars, but they're not. They're like bikes in our real world. So it's going to be probably a bit more of the relatability in this series than ever before. Um, so really excited for all of that. Again, we're going to see classrooms. Carrie Condon looks like she is a teacher of sort for the kids. Um, and again, like I want to preface to everybody, when you go into this and perhaps just any other, it's a good lesson for any other major IP project that has had stuff come up before. Just check your brain and nostalgia at the door. It's okay to have that coming in, but allow the people that created the story to tell you the story that they want to, and just let it sit on you. You don't need to go to the internet right away and blast your feelings out on full to everybody. Maybe just take a minute, relax with it, and ingest it, and process it. Think through how it affects the larger galaxy. Perhaps this is just one episode in a larger episode of 8, and it may be just a minute detail. It may be a bigger detail. You never know when it comes to these things about when you see the full picture from, and when you don't get that, when it's all dropped at once and you have the full canvas, right? When you're getting these week to week installments, sometimes a cliffhanger is meant to elicit a response, and sometimes it's meant to drive clicks and conversation and interest, right? They want people to keep watching the show throughout the course of the 6-7 weeks, however long it goes, to ensure that they have the most success possible when it comes to this work. So again, if there is something that perhaps you disagree with, it may be explained further. It may be just a certain person's point of view. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be the end all be all when it comes to your enjoyment of the project as well. So just keep those things in mind as we go through the next couple of weeks here. And I think that'll be really important for just anybody in general. It's good life instinct and lesson when tackling a new major IP project like this. I can't wait to just learn more about these kids and what their nuances are, what their interests are, what their likes are, how they interact with their own families. What's it like to be in Star Wars Suburbia? I think that's a new aspect of this show that we have never really seen before in this grand space opera. Um, so let's see what it's like, and also give us more of this post Return of the Jedi era. We've seen what Navarro looks like. We've seen Tatooine in this time frame, from the various aspects of the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett. But what does a planet seemingly that is doing well for itself? How do they react to the New Republic? How are they endearing to that? And what are the larger implications for the galaxy that'll be presented in this show? Those are some of the things that I'll be looking out for as they are kind of broader questions. But at the end of the day, I'll also be enjoying this adventure between these kids. Do they have the heart, the whimsical nature, the humor that will be hopefully at the forefront of this? I hope so. Will the villains be enough of a foil to um, keep the show engaging and interesting? I hope so as well. Will John and Alwood be a good guy or bad guy or somewhere in the middle? Again, we'll have to find out. So much of this show is going to be, I think, surprising, and I think that's an exciting thing because we don't need to know everything going into. That's the point of things, is to be surprised as we learn and we grow. Life doesn't always have to be exactly fitting into a box, and I think that this show will be outside the box in many ways for Star Wars. So it's going to challenge us. It's going to challenge the way we think, the things that we know about Star Wars and what can be. I always get a little like grumpy when I hear people try and define Star Wars and put it into a box. And the way that I was always described it is as it's like this wacky space opera that um, you know is meant to teach us lessons for becoming better people at the end of the day, right? I know George will be like, it's for 12-year-olds, and I add that it's for the 12-year-old in all of us as well, to see people engaged in situations where they have to choose between right and wrong, and through that they learn lessons, and it's a safe way for us sitting in our seats or watching on our devices to see them do these things, so that if we come in that situation, we can pull from that and go, oh, hey, they did that in this situation, it didn't work out so great for them, so I'm going to do X instead. That's the only thing that I really put parameters on when it comes to my Star Wars. And I feel like that's a very open and liberal approach, perhaps, to reviewing the saga, and that's larger stories beyond it. But I think it's been a really healthy way for me to approach these stories and all that. So maybe it works for you all, and you're able to take that mentality into these next couple of projects upcoming here. But Skeleton Crew, can't wait for it. Very excited for it, and just happy to learn more and more about these characters as we go on and introduce them to the larger galaxy, because we're basically going to be growing with them in some ways, right? Where we're going to be on the suburbs with them, seemingly where it starts, and then we're going to go to the next place. And it's going to kind of be this like a New Hope sequence again, where we are like Luke Skywalker on this foreign planet, and then go off into the larger galaxy to learn about our destinies along the way. So with that, folks, that is all I had for this week. I hope that you're prepared for Skeleton Crew. I know I'm excited, and I can't wait to see this show when it finally premieres on Disney Plus on December 3rd. What do you think about Skeleton Crew? Of course, continue the conversation with us on our social media platforms. We're still on X somehow. I don't know how long we'll be there yet, or to what capacity we'll be there. Still figuring that out and thinking through that. So X right now, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and we're also on Threads and Blue Sky. And I've definitely been on Blue Sky the most lately. So follow us. Just search for Force Ghost Conversations on all those platforms, and we'll be there in some capacity. So there's that, and we'd love to continue the conversation with you about Skeleton Crew. We have a wonderful list of guests lined up for upcoming Skeleton Crew coverage. So as we get into those, be on the lookout for that. I know this is a kind of a shorter episode, but I think you all of the listener audience have deserved that. It's also just me talking into a microphone, doing a monologue here over the course of the last 25 minutes here. And I know we've been doing like 2-hour episodes recently, and I I want to vary it up for everybody, so we're not just taking up your entirety of your podcast feeds here, because I know when we get into these Skeleton Crew conversations, there are going to be some long talks, of course. So yeah, we got a lot of like great guests lined up, so I think you're going to be really thrilled to hear about what we got cooking for Skeleton Crew and all of that. Again, we have a Patreon site if you want to support the show on that. Links are in the episode description. We have a variety of different tiers available where you, for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to other Forest Ghost Conversations goodies. And also we have a T Public Store, which is basically our t-shirt merchandise place where we have a variety of different logos and designs, and you can buy things like pillows and t-shirts and hoodies and um, baby clothing, right? All that crazy stuff. Pillows. Wild. We have more artwork coming out in the near future, which will be added to our T Public site. So just continue to monitor that. And they run sales pretty regularly. So if you want to get it at a discounted rate, of course, we will receive some of the proceeds as well, which I think is awesome. And then I usually funnel that directly into the show, whether it be through going to conferences and experiences that we do on the show, or improving the tech makeup that we have here to continue providing a fantastic product for you all. That is what we do there with that. So again, thank you everybody for listening. Can't wait to get into the Skeleton Crew conversation with you all. And we'll be back next week with our episode discussions on 1 and 2 of Skeleton Crew. So until then, may the force be with you. Take care.